Good morning and a warm welcome to the key points on Saturday, June 4, a day which holds historical significance in our country. I'm Jifa Bampo. It's my pleasure to be with you once again. On the program today, we take a look at the IMANI Financial Recklessness Index listing, which MMDCAs have been listed as the most reckless in its financial expenditures. Now, this is the second research of the same nature done by IMANI, covering a period 2015 to 2020. Now, it's estimated that the country, our country, Ghana, has lost a total of 13.9 billion Ghana cedis in financial irregularities, covering stores procurement, cash, tax, payroll, rent, and contract irregularities. This amount represents some 3.64% of our GDP in 2020. Now, the ministries for finance, health, roads and highways hold the unenviable record of being the top 3 in the Financial Recklessness Index. We'll find out why and get a view of what strategies we must adopt to curb wanton waste of public funds. IMANI estimates that, for instance, outstanding income taxes for 2020 alone amounted to 126.2 million Ghana cedis, which can finance the entire expenditure for the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty program, LEAP, which costs some 70 million cedis a year to fund. Now, we'll bring you more on this later in the program, so feel free to stay with us and share your thoughts as well. Also this morning, the debate over the National Cathedral resurfaces. It's emerged that government has authorized the payment of some 25 million Ghana cedis as seed money for the project. Now, following that, there are also claims that some 37 million cedis has also been paid for the architectural consultancy work that was done by Sir David Ajay, the architect that designed the National Cathedral project. Now, this has resurrected hue and cry over prestige project and financial priorities in a time where NAPCO trainees, national service, teacher trainee allowances, and school feeding caterers require outstanding payment or upward adjustments. So many question the actions of government in regard to this project, which has already been allocated millions of dollars of prime land, among other support. The optics just don't look good. We'll be bringing you details of that here on the show as well. We're live on TV3 and 3FM 92.7, also around the world at 3news.com. Follow us on social media, on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page as well for both TV3 and 3FM 92.7. Share your thoughts as well to our WhatsApp line is 055 369 8789. You can also tweet at me at Gov't Bampo. Thank you for joining us on the show. We take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us here on TV3 and 3FM 92.7. I hope you'll be able to stay with us for the full 3 hours. Feel free to send us your messages. I'll give you the lines later. But the old saying goes, numbers don't lie. And this week, research from IMANI Africa has revealed in numerical terms what many of us knew courtesy the Auditor General's report and from the Public Accounts Committee hearings. Now, the Akufo-Addo administration faces a twin problem of unsustainable debt levels, liquidity challenges, and these are worsened by the weak revenue mobilization systems that we have. Hence, the announcement recently of emergency measures to save the economy. Let's remind ourselves of what the finance minister told us he'll be doing in March.
With regards to savings, I mean, in terms of initial calculations of all of that, will be about 3.5 billion Ghana cedis that we expect to be able to save. But we'll keep titrating and tightening it and ensure that we get as much from that as possible.
So Finance Minister there telling us a bit about the savings, and it was all part of a press conference to announce various measures to rescue the economy and control government's expenditure, or should I say rein government's expenditure in. Now, the truth is that the amounts that we are losing are significant. Some 13.9 billion covering 2015 to 2020 is what we've lost relating to financial irregularities. And this covers procurement, cash, tax irregularities, payroll, rent monies we should be collecting, contract irregularities, monies paid and work not done. It makes it difficult to give government a pass. Let's get a bit more context when this report was launched, the Financial Recklessness Index from IMANI.
According to IMANI's Fiscal Recklessness Index, management's failure to adhere to the rules and regulations pertaining to debt management, cash and tax irregularities are the main drivers of the recklessness. The think tank says weak enforcement and poor tax collection resulted in some 3,600 companies owing about 837 million cedis in taxes between 2019 and 2020. Dennis Asare, research consultant with IMANI, highlighted the reasons for these irregularities.
We've identified that there are a lot of opportunities to raise domestic revenue, but because we are not enforcing compliance, that is why we are not collecting them. Another challenge is weak monitoring and control within the public institutions. So the monitoring evaluation mechanisms in the public institutions have broken down. And another major driver is that the internal audit function is not being effective as it's supposed to be because they are not on the gift miss.
Between 2015 and 2020, the fiscal recklessness of MDAs in Ghana increased 13 times compared to the financial recklessness recorded between 2010 and 2014. IMANI stated that government is not getting optimal results from the public financial management reforms implemented within 2015 and 2020.
The Ministry of Finance is also a central management agency. That is, it coordinates the activities of other ministries and department agencies. For example, the GRA technically is a subsidiary agency under the Ministry of Finance. The Controller Accountant General is also same. So over the period, we identify cash and tax irregularity as the main drivers of the recklessness. And these transactions are managed by these two agencies under the Ministry of Finance. That's why they are the most fiscally reckless institution, followed by the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, Employment and Foreign Affairs.
He called for sanctions for individuals who cause the irregularities, tightening of internal audit systems and to make them independent to enable these institutions to fully execute internal audits. Other stakeholders also called on the Attorney General and the Office of the Special Prosecutor to demonstrate their commitment to public financial management.
All right, so that's the context within which this financial recklessness report has been issued. Now, there was one done previously, I think sometime 2012. We'll bring you a bit more on that as well. And take note that the kind of figures being mentioned do not take into consideration financials of the country from 2021, particularly when we had to put aside our financial management legislation due to COVID to allow the government to undertake emergency expenditure. So the reality looking into the future could be far worse. How can we deal with these as we try to get the government to rein in on its expenditures, bearing in mind we have a huge external and domestic debt? Feel free to share your thoughts to our WhatsApp platform. Feel free to also send your thoughts to our Twitter pages and our Facebook pages. It's TV3_Ghana, 3FM 92.7. You can also tweet at me at Beho Bampo. The WhatsApp line is 055-369-8789. So before we continue, let's just take a look at two graphs that were put in the IMANI document, and it talks about the costs that we lose, or the amounts of monies that we lose, and it gives you a kind of a breakdown of that. So you can see that when it comes to tax, you can see a huge amount of tax irregularities. And it's not just about collecting the tax. There are also things about people who are supposed to be paying that are not being followed up on and the like. Then there's the bit about contract, there's the bit about rent, there's also the bit about procurement, payroll, but you also see that we have a huge chunk there which is cash payments that are also made, and we don't get value for money. So that's one bit of it. The other artwork I can now bring you from the IMANI research has to do with the trend of financial irregularities. As you can see from the graphs provided by IMANI and Oxfam, we've seen a significant jump from 2015, look at the jump to 2016, look at the drop in 2017, and the significant heights in 2018. In fact, 2018 saw the worst level of financial irregularities coming from the ministries, departments, and agencies covering a 6-year period. There's a slight dip in 2019, and in 2020, you see a slight dip as well. But it doesn't excuse the fact that we've lost so much money already, and yet we are reeling under significant debt. We have internal policies and programs to pursue that we cannot pursue. And if you consider that these are the kinds of monies that we're losing, it beggars belief that we continue on this path, which is certainly unsustainable. So let me welcome our guests who have joined us. The authors of the report, like I indicated, are IMANI Africa. So we have one of their researchers, Dennis Asare, who is with IMANI Africa. Thank you, Dennis, for joining us in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
And then we have the Honorable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who is the MP for North Tongu and ranking member for Foreign Affairs, but he takes a lot of interest in how we spend our money as a country. And so that's why he's here. Thank you very much, Honorable Ablakwa, for coming in.
Always a pleasure, Jifa.
And we will be having Dr. Odrosai, who is the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency. Now, he is critical because, much as he hasn't been in the role for too long, I think it's just a little over a year, a lot has to do with how we are enforcing internal audit procedures to ensure that the rules are being applied. And for those who fall foul, what are the sanctions? As you've seen, the Public Accounts Committee has been sitting, and they've been sitting on, I think, the 2019 Auditor General's report. So there's also the issue of getting up to speed quickly on the reports that are presented and ensuring that the Auditor General also presents the most current report so that we can deal with the financial irregularities. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. So the numbers, I'll start with Dennis, the numbers are staggering, really, really staggering. Give us a view of what is the worst in terms of the financial irregularities we've seen, because there's the breakdown of the tax, there's the bit about the cash. Explain to us the tax bit. Is it just that government is not collecting taxes, or people are avoiding taxes, or people are just simply not paying?
Okay, let me start by saying good morning to our viewers and also those listening to us on radio. And maybe before I go into the breakdown, maybe we can give a little context to see how we have traveled so far, because the overall essence of these PFM reforms we are implementing is to ensure prudent spending as well as strategic allocation of resources. So if you take us back between 2010 and 2014, you see that the composite irregularity is about 1.43 billion Ghana cedis. Now you transition to 2015 to 2020, and it increases by more than 13 times. So that tells you that even averagely, your annual irregularities have increased. And during the presentation, we show that even between 2010 and 2014, our peak, or the highest irregularity we recorded, was just about 500 million Ghana cedis. But if you come into 2015 to 2020, what you realize is that the irregularities that we record, or the average irregularity, is about 4 times the highest we recorded between the period 2010 and 2014. So that tells you that, to some extent, there is a bit of a high operational inefficiencies in the use of public funds, or how we even mobilize revenue generally. Now, coming down to the tax irregularity itself, so Jifa, if you look at the period of the analysis between 2015 and 2020, what we see is that tax irregularity alone is about 9.2 billion out of the 13.9 billion Ghana cedis of financial irregularities recorded over the period. And the major drivers of these irregularities were taxes that were not collected, outstanding debts owed by companies in terms of the taxes due that government is not collecting, weak enforcement of compliance, and sometimes if you even try to corroborate it or look at the Public Accounts Committee sitting, some of the reports or the commentaries that were provided by the GRE, some companies even cannot be found. And if you look at the 2017 report by the Public Accounts Committee, you clearly see that there is a challenge in terms of enforcing compliance. And so broadly, if you look at the tax irregularities recorded over the period of the analysis, the key driver of it is lack of compliance in terms of enforcing compliance within the period or the time that the tax is supposed to be collected. So for example, people clear goods from bonded warehouses and do not pay the taxes due the state. People lift oil from Tema Oil Refinery and do not pay the taxes due the state. Again, we've also failed to apply the penalties within our tax laws. Then again, you look at, if you come to the medium tax offices and small taxpayer offices, you realize that people that we know who have filed their VAT that they are supposed to pay owe the state and they are not being collected. So it tells us that even from the lower level to the higher level of tax collection, enforcing compliance has become very difficult for us. And that is why we see a lot of tax irregularities over the period. And that if we are unable to enforce compliance, it will be hard for us to address this. And what this report does is that it supports existing assessment by international organizations like ITAD, who have done assessment of our tax revenue mobilization and identified that in terms of enforcing compliance, that is the major constraint. And if you try to look at the 2018 Public Expenditure and Financial Assessment Report, it also flags it up again as revenue mobilization is the major problem. And one of the major problems is identifying taxpayers and even collecting the taxes on time. And we've seen other issues with integrity where sometimes officers sometimes collude with people and people are able to avoid taxes. So what the Auditor General brings to us is the evaluation of taxes that are supposed to be collected within a period that we don't collect. And when there are delays in government receiving monies to finance its expenditure, then the government may have to now look outside. And that is why we are seeing relatively higher numbers of debts that we are recording over the period. So the main driver of the tax irregularities is that enforcing compliance has become difficult even within the population of taxpayers that we know. Now, if you come to even the informal sector where we don't even identify these taxpayers, it is much more even very difficult to enforce compliance. And one of the issues that we also identified is where people now generate a lot of TIN numbers, and that's why now they are trying to streamline everything to the Ghana card. And another challenge is companies who also fold up and register new companies and avoid paying those taxes. So all of that come together to influence the tax irregularities that we are recording over the period. But that notwithstanding, institutionally, in terms of enforcing compliance, that is the major challenge that we face.
Okay, explain to us a bit about the cash. I think the others are self-explanatory. Yeah. But the bit about the cash losses, what is that? Okay, so if you look at cash irregularities, they include the spending of the MDEs, as well as monies that they collect on behalf of the state that they are supposed to pay, or how they even utilize or their expenditure within the period. So if you go into the cash irregularities, the main drivers are non-lodgement of funds. So people collect monies on behalf of government and they fail to lodge it in government accounts. Another area is people lodging public funds into private accounts. So the Auditor General consistently identified this issue as a major problem. Another issue is MDAs making payments without supporting the payment with vouchers. So you go to the MDAs and during the audit assessment, payments have been done, but there are no vouchers to support that payment. Another issue that also comes out strongly is misallocation of funds. So some funds may be earmarked for a particular activity, but in the end, what the fund actually goes to do is different from what it was supposed to even go to. Then there are also issues with delays in even paying statutory funds that they collect on behalf of government. So all of that
looks at the cash irregularities, look at how these MDAs were able to manage the cash that were allocated to them, as well as even the monies that they receive on behalf of government. How are they able to even pay it on time or use those monies in line with the PFM structures that we have developed? And that is about almost, if I check, 2.9 billion and about 21% of the total irregularities recorded over the period. And if you look at the cash irregularities alone within this period, in fact, it is higher than the additional healthcare spending during the pandemic. And it tells us that even within the institutions themselves, for example, if you look at tax, even the tax irregularities, enforcing compliance is a much more difficult task. But if you look at cash management, then what you expect to see is that if internal controls are working effectively and internal audit systems and monitoring and evaluation frameworks are being utilized effectively, then you should see that translate into addressing these cash irregularities. For example, lack of supporting vouchers and misallocation of funds. These are issues that can be addressed within the institutions, and where people are found foul, sanctions can be applied. And because we've not been able to do all that, that is why we are seeing a higher numbers of cash irregularities. And in 2016, it was, I think, the highest irregularity, about 95% of the total irregularities recorded in that period.
All right. Let me come to Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. And I've just been informed that Dr. Odrosai will be unable to join us this morning. We'll make an effort to get an alternative view and bring that to you from government. But in the meantime, so Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa, I know that we've known for a long time that we are losing money. But I think this report, in a sense, gives us a view of how much. For instance, if we are told that a certain amount we lost is equivalent to funding the LEAP program in total and 45% plus, then it really raises questions about us as a country, our structures, and I know that is something that you're usually concerned about. What do you make of the IMANI report?
Well, let me extend warm regards to Dennis, your good self, and to all our viewers. The IMANI report makes for very grim reading, and we must commend them for the consistency. This is the second one.
This is the second one. I think the last one you said was 2012 to
2016. 2012 to 14.
Yes, and I recall that at the time it was the NDC that was
on the chopping block.
Exactly. And so it's good to see civil society organizations, maintain consistency and show principle, so that this shows that when they did the first report, it's not because they were targeting, the NDC. So I think that as a matter of principle, that is worth commending. And I must commend their partners. Oxfam were major financiers, and I know that they are also particular about how state resources are utilized. So they also deserve commendation. I was at the launch. Let me thank Franklin Kujo for the invitation. And indeed, it was a very depressing morning going through the amounts of money that has been lost, about 13.9 billion.
Was that a shock to you?
I've been following matters to do with wastage, corruption, lack of priority, but I really had not put all of that together. So it came as a real shock, looking at the volumes. And it is sad that the Ministry of Finance, which really should be leading by example and should be at the forefront of reforms to make sure that we plug the loopholes. Look, I am beginning to believe that all of these bottlenecks and deliberate, gaps is not fought vigorously because some people benefit from it and they want the system to remain as it is so that they can continue to, as it were, feed fat at the expense of the people. Look, as a country, if you consider our state, look at how the little rainfall and then there are floods properties are destroyed, lives are lost. I mean, people cannot sleep. Nobody can do anything. Have we quantified, you know, the impact on productivity, on our national progress? And yet, if you look at World Bank data, we are not, in Africa, we are not even amongst the top 3 countries in terms of rainfall patterns. You know, it's Liberia, Sierra Leone, Equatorial Guinea. You know, they are doing about 2,500 millimeters of rain a year on the average. We are just around 1,200. And this has been a challenge since when? The 1960s. We can't solve it. You know, a gamut of lawlessness and largely lack of investment. You know, the last time we received $500 million from the World Bank to use to solve this flooding challenge, it's been diverted. We say we are going to spend it on COVID. And up to now, late last year when I asked the Minister for Works and Housing in Parliament, he says that he has to go see the Finance Minister as to when the money will be replaced. And so you wonder what is wrong with us.
But we have the financial regulations that are to ensure that there's a certain compliance. Where are we going wrong?
Where we are going wrong, honestly, in my view, is the lack of a sanction regime where we don't have the political will to punish particularly our own. You see, the fight against corruption and against, because all of this really comes to corruption. I mean, this, you see, let's call it what it is. All these cash irregularities.
Oh, but is it corruption?
It's largely corruption. It is. Look, the laws are there. Every violation. Take, for example, the 2019 Auditor General Report revelation that 193.2 million Ghana cedis was diverted. Section 69 of the Revenue Administration Act was flagrantly violated. The Finance Minister gave wrong instructions to the GRA boss to divert funds from GRA to pay some companies. An instruction that the GRA boss himself should not have followed, because Section 69 says that the minister shall set aside an amount of not more than 6% of the total revenue collected under this act and any other enactment administered by the Commissioner General in an account designated as the Ghana Revenue Authority General Refund Account, from which funds due under this act and refunds due under any other tax law shall be paid by the Commissioner General. So 193 million cedis had accrued, and the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, asked the Commissioner General to divert the funds and make payments to Authentics, Kelny GVG, McKinsey Company Limited, Safari Tech, CTN Ghana, Streamline Resources, Suba Info Solutions, ISC Holdings, Express Housing Development Construction, SAP Investment Holding. And this is a clear diversion. The funds have not been recouped as we speak, and nothing has happened. I hold in my hands here, again, the 2021 auditor, this is the budget statement. When we were approving this budget in Parliament, page 273, the Finance Minister had captured here transfer to Government of Ghana COVID account for Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, 19.3 million. Then another transfer to Government of Ghana COVID account for Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration for airfare for 2,221 returnees from Lebanon, 46.3 million. So in excess of 65 million Ghana cedis. Will you believe that the Ministry of Finance, all of them, from the Minister, the Chief Director, the Finance Director, all of them said they knew nothing. They were seeing this for the first time. There's no such account that exists at the ministry. They have not received any transfers. That remains a mystery as we speak. Over 65 million Ghana cedis. So between Ministry of Finance, the Foreign Ministry, and then National Security, they've been tossing us about, during the budget review process. Ministry of Finance says, oh, we thought we released it to Foreign Affairs. Now that Foreign Affairs says they don't know about it, we record that National Security also was doing some evacuations. So asked them, National Security said, hey, we know nothing about this. Please leave us out. And it's remained a mystery. It's hanging. Over 65 million Ghana cedis.
And this is for 2021.
2021, you know, at the peak of COVID. That is why we in Parliament called for a special probe into the COVID-19 expenditure. And you know what happened? Our colleagues shut it down. That day, the first deputy speaker was in the chair. The speaker was not available. And so they shut it down. So, you see, the system is set up deliberately for people to just abuse. And the fight against corruption in Ghana has become the corruption of my political opponents. What I perceive or suspect they did wrong, I go after them. So, check all the corruption related cases at the courts now. You know, we are going after past appointees, creating the impression that nothing has happened now. 6 years, getting to 7 years of the Akufo-Addo administration, nothing. That's all the litany of corruption related exposés.
So it doesn't surprise you that the finance ministry, the roads ministry, the health ministry, the foreign affairs ministry. I must admit, I was a bit surprised about the foreign affairs ministry, but because of what you've said now, it doesn't surprise you that they are at the top of the index.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all.
I'll come back to you on another point, but let me ask Dennis, why was there significant jump in 2018? I understand that was by what, some 13 times? Why did we see a significant jump in the irregularities and the monies lost?
Okay, so the 13 times is that's over the period. If you compare it to the period between 2010 and 2014.
So if you compare between what happened between 2012.
Yes, 2010. So we try to even go back 2010 to 2014.
2010 to 2014.
The composite irregularities and compare that to 2015 and 2020. And the reason why we did that is this is the period where we've even passed the Public Financial Management Act. We implemented a full-blown PFM reform program. We've had the gift miss, procurement laws have been amended, and there's also an even electronic procurement platform. So what one would expect is that there will be some discipline in the spending of public resources. Now, in 2018, what we realized was that we recorded a very high level of tax irregularities. And the tax irregularities, if you look at the summaries that the Auditor General reported, were mainly around the downstream petroleum sector, where OMCs lifted petroleum without paying the right duties. People cleared goods from bonded warehouses without paying the right duties. And all the other outstanding taxes, for example, outstanding income tax and corporate income tax of about 3,600 companies was almost about 837 million Ghana cedis. And there are some even in millions of dollars that were not collected within the period. So the Auditor General flags it up. And what was even surprising is that for you to clear goods from bonded warehouses, then means you must have paid everything that you are supposed to do, even from the thermal oil refinery. So when you don't even do that, that is where it is flagged up. So the main areas of the tax irregularities came from outstanding taxes and taxes on goods that were lifted, oil that were lifted from toll, and goods from bonded warehouses, that taxes were not paid, plus the general indiscipline or lack of enforcement with the tax regulations in the country. Okay,
it's interesting you raise the issue of the liftings, because I spoke with Dr. Kwabena Donko sometime, I think it was last year, and he did raise these issues. I'm just wondering, did that improve in later years? We see that there's some drop for 2019 and 2020. Does that mean that those taxes for the 2018 were collected, that is in the downstream sector and elsewhere?
Okay, so what we also want to explain further is that the main drivers of our irregularities over the last 10 years has been cash and tax irregularities. So anytime we lose our guard down on tax compliance enforcement and proper cash management strategies, we should expect that our irregularities will rise significantly. So if you do a trend of the composite in effect of cash and tax irregularities, is over 80% over the last 10 years. So consistently, they have become the main drivers of our irregularities. So in periods where we record a relatively low
numbers, what that suggests is that during that period, some compliance enforcement were enhanced, or within that period, the irregularities reported or captured by the Auditor General was relatively lower, since the report draws a lot on the Auditor General's report. So within that period, we can say that when we improve compliance enforcement, we are more likely to address these irregularities. And you see that in 2015 and 2016, where the numbers were relatively lower, compared to if you come to the 18, 19, 20, it tells you that the level of enforcement of compliance has not been effective like the previous years, despite the fact that we are implementing new measures. But if you try to analyze the Auditor General's report, then the main drivers has been the lack of enforcement of compliance, mainly within the extractive area, that is the thermal oil refining, in terms of the lifting, sometimes within the free zones, and largely uncollected taxes or outstanding taxes within the system that we are not collecting. So if you try to put, let me say, the drivers of the tax irregularities within 3 boxes, it's mainly within the custom area. Then you come to the oil lifting. For example, 28 OMCs lifted oil, and the tax liability of about 226 million was not collected between the period 2018 and 2019. Then again, you come to the medium taxpayer offices, and you see a lot of outstanding taxes, be it in the VAT category, income tax or corporate taxes that were not collected. Then general lack of compliance and application of tax penalties within the system. So all of these 3 come together, and that the period where we recorded higher numbers, this is how the Auditor General captures is that within this period, tax compliance enforcement was very weak.
Okay, so I did try to get the Deputy Minister of Finance to join us on the show. He declined. However, I picked this response from his Facebook page. It says, IMANI did a poor job on its fiscal recklessness report and only rehashed the Auditor General's report. It's important to set the record straight on the recent report, categorizing the Ministry of Finance as the most fiscally reckless institution in the country. He says, first to say the report by IMANI is deceptive and misleading. It failed to take into account other material facts like how a part of the 11 billion Ghana cedis it referred to has been recovered and legal action taken against people and organizations. It's also worthy of mention that the basis for this classification by IMANI Ghana emanates from the Auditor General's reports, which have been widely misinterpreted and abused to create an impression that the nation has lost some billions when, as part of fact, this is not the case. The AG's report, per its reporting structure, did not account for the funds recovered, even though government had taken steps to address the losses and recover the money. It goes on to say that I provided some analysis on the 12 billion losses reported by the Auditor General and why the state had not entirely lost the said 12 billion Ghana cedis. Your response on that?
Okay, so let me start by saying that it was quite unfortunate when I saw the news article that he mentioned it is a poor job. I mean, we've been consistent with the methodology, and for us to compare between periods, we had to stick with the method, and even this time, improve on the method and add some root cause diagnostic to what we do. Now, in the previous period, what we do is that until Public Accounts Committee sits and publishes its report, no ministry has even reported on some of the resolutions of the ill findings of the Auditor General. And the only reference point that is credible, because this is done in public, and we believe that before the Public Accounts Committee is even published, it's gone through the plenary and it's been approved by Parliament. Now, currently, the PAC is sitting on the 2018-19 report. So then it means that clearly there has been no sitting even on the 2019 and 20 report. So at what point has these collections been, even if they have been made, how do we justify and prove it? And that is why when we are calculating the fiscal recklessness, in terms of recoveries, cannot be captured because consistency of data is very important. What the Fiscal Recklessness Index report is that the PFM systems are created to ensure efficiency, and that there shouldn't be at any point where we tolerate financial irregularities, particularly where people flagrantly abuse PFM laws. And there are some of the losses that can be recovered, but some will never be recovered. Let me give you an example, Jifa. If you look at the tax irregularities, they can be recovered because some of the people who owe these taxes can be identified. There are times that some of them will never be identified and we are going to lose it. For example, if you look at the Public Accounts Committee report on the 2017 Auditor General's report, what they mention is that even when, and please permit me to read a section of that. Now, when they try to do the corrections and put in all the collections that have been made, the tax irregularities were about 655 million Ghana cedis. Now, when the committee sat, permit me to look at the committee's observation and the irregularities that were resolved, out of the 655 million that was identified, after the committee's assessment of how much has been resolved, outstanding tax irregularities alone was about 290 million. Can the minister say that this is acceptable within a PFM framework that is to ensure
so they
prudent
collected
spending?
some 300 and something million.
364 million
Yeah,
out of
but
the
there's
655.
still some 290 outstanding. Where is that money?
Where is that money? And even to support that, the PAC said, and that's based on the commentary by the GRA and the Ministry of Finance, that some of the companies that the Auditor General identifies them to be engaged in tax liability that has not been recorded, and for that matter, that irregularity has been found, some of the companies cannot even be found. And they mentioned some companies within the public, and for example, an example that the Ministry of Finance even gave, Prestia Sankofa Limited royalties debt is still outstanding. Then if you go down, they mention Oranto Stone Energy indebtedness to the state. These are monies that until we find the people who owe the country, we may not be able to collect them. Let's come to the other side of the irregularities in terms of procurement irregularities, where state agencies, MDAs, choose the wrong method to engage in public procurement and we lose value. The financial value of that irregularity can never be recovered. Again, if you look at even the financial losses in delays in payment of tax, is the minister trying to say that even when people delay in paying taxes and they later pay, we can recover the financial damage of the irregularity? Look back at currently, look at how the school feeding program is suffering. Look at how we are struggling to finance the feeding of even the free senior high school. Look at how we are even struggling to meet our debt liability. Is the minister saying that now it is acceptable that even when people fail to pay their tax liabilities and later it is recovered, it is not a problem at all? What the Fiscal Recklessness Index is pointing us is that within our PFM framework, there are a lot of loopholes that is preventing government from raising the right revenue, from preventing the government from raising the right funds to finance the expenditure. If you look at tax irregularities alone, it is 2 billion higher than how much this government said they have spent on free senior high school between 2017 to 2021, according to the education minister when he met the press, that they spent about 7.7 billion. And you have a PFM framework that is able to allow about 9.2 billion of tax irregularities to go unrecorded, and that you have to spend additional money, set up team to go and follow up on those monies. And if you say that because you have recovered it, this is a poor work, then he has lost the main purpose of the work we are doing. What we
shouldn't even be having
we shouldn't even be having that if our PFM system is effective.
All right.
For example,
let me come to Honorable Black, and I'll come back to you a bit more. So, Honorable Black, you saw the response from the Deputy Finance Minister. The point is, does Parliament have a way of identifying how much has been collected to start with? Because I think what we know is we have a view of how much we've lost, but we never get a view of, after all the PAC sittings, these are the amounts that have been collected. Is there anything like that?
You're talking about the retrievals.
Yes,
the
retrievals. Is it surcharges or that's different?
Yes, the Public Account Committee is able to track that from reports that they receive from the Auditor General. But you see, what the Deputy Finance Minister put out is most disingenuous.
Why?
To go after IMANI, that they did a poor job. IMANI has done nothing wrong. The people the Deputy Finance Minister and the Finance Ministry should be going after are those who are destroying this country, who are milking us. If you look at the 5 top ministries, these are very important sectors: finance, health, roads and highways, employment, foreign affairs. These are where the major challenges of our country are. A few days.
I was even surprised that education was not high up there. Education is much lower.
A few days ago, the roads minister himself was fuming in the Ashanti region, a bridge that they had just constructed, and after one rainfall, the bridge was washed away. It collapsed, and he was angry that who supervised it. I mean, how did the engineers certify that the contractor should be paid? Only last week. See the state of our roads. You've seen the pictures from the Kaneshi roads, Taifa, all over. One rainfall, and the roads are washed away. This is what explains what is going on. That because of corruption, the projects are not being properly executed. In the health sector, we are still grappling with no bed syndrome. People are losing their lives because we say that we can't afford basic equipment. Some of us have been donating incubators. Can you imagine? It's so basic that it's, I mean, in this day and age, preterm babies should not be dying, should not be, as it were, subjected to death because they have been born in Ghana. But that is what we are seeing. Pregnant women delivering on bare floors. It's as a result of this. So the anger, the outrage should be directed properly. Look, when the Deputy Finance Minister says that, oh, there are efforts to retrieve and all of these monies can be retrieved, it's not true. He doesn't even avert his mind to the time value of money. Yeah. We are talking about a report from what, 2010 to 2014, and then 2015 to 2020. I mean, it's 2 million cedis 5 years ago, the same as today. Look at where inflation is. And then we are seeing blatant, if you like, incompetence, where the state can safeguard the little that has been saved. And what am I speaking to? Manasseh Azuri's work on the PPA boss, the contract for sale expose. Manasseh did a great job. The Deputy Finance Minister knows that the PPA, his ministry, has supervisory role over public procurement in our country. If you look at the PPA Act, the Finance Ministry is the supervising ministry. How did they sit and allow ABAJ to retrieve all the monies that he had in his account when we were told that the account had been frozen? His CD account, dollar account, euro accounts had been frozen. We are speaking in excess of 41 million Ghana cedis. There's no chicken change. 41 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Blakwa,
yes, the accounts were frozen. It was for a certain period of time. Mr. ABAJ and his lawyers were well within their right when the time elapsed to go back to the court. If nothing had been found, then they got it defrozen. We can't necessarily blame them for, I don't want to say taking advantage of a loophole, but that was an option open to them. They took it.
I think the point
I'm making is that why did we allow that loophole
to even happen at all?
To happen to our rights? Why did we allow that? I mean, we saw this expose Manasseh did has won him so many awards internationally and locally. I mean, the gentleman has really conceded. He's confessed. I mean, he's been prosecuted. I mean, even that, it was after Manasseh came back and exposed the fact that the accounts had been emptied. That's when the OSP moved in. You know, so you see, there's no commitment. Look, ABAJ's boss, the finance minister, and then the Minister of State for Finance, what is their own conduct and reputation when it comes to this discussion? We have said in Parliament, time without number, that there's a clear conflict of interest that arises when the finance minister's data bank is still transaction advisor and is still receiving arrangers' fees. The Minister of State, Charles Edubuahen, Black Star Holdings. We have said time without number. Only this week, the National Anti-Corruption Coalition has also put out a statement that, look, it is wrong. Why are we accepting this? The president is not acting. The finance minister, the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, the Honorable Charles Edubuahin, continue to profit, to benefit from this clear conflict of interest situation. So are we really committed to the fight against corruption? I don't see that commitment. You see, this is a president who really came with a lot of hope. When he said he'll protect the public purse, when he said that, look, if you want to make money, stay in the private sector, don't be part of his team. Many Ghanaians believed it. I mean, I have always said that I prefer our politics being a race to the top. So I'll give even my opponents the benefit of the doubt when we are campaigning. When you come to office, try and do better than we did. Then we will also review our, past, make amends, and then promise to do better than those who are doing better than us when we also get another opportunity. But that's not what we are seeing in this country. We are, look at the numbers, 13 times worse off. Yeah. So it's a race
at a time where we are supposed to be digitalized, at a time where we are supposed to have proper systems in place. It's not an old, antiquated process we are running.
I think our GIFMIS is one of the best in the world. If you look
other
at
countries have come to other countries have come to
the
study
best.
our GIFMIS system. And you see, when you go through the data, what is even worrying to me now is that I see that from the various portfolios,
the ministries,
the debts we are collecting at very huge cost. You see where our debt to GDP ratio is now, in excess of 80%. We've borrowed over though the Bank of Ghana is 391 billion is without other elements, like the Get Fund, Dache, ESLA, and all of that. So it's in excess of 400 billion, And yet, IMANI is reporting now that we are seeing an increase, that even the debt that we are accruing, that too, corruption has invaded that territory. And it's just a matter of time. The international community will start saying that, look, even the debt you want, we won't give it to you.
But
because it's now at 9%, And you saw that a few days ago, the World Bank, had to protest about some $1.2 million that they gave to the Ministry of Education, which they are not accounting for properly. The GES says they don't know anything about. So, the corruption is now so endemic that money that we are borrowing, we are subjecting it to corruption.
But I'm just wondering, looking at these ministries, is it really fair to hold the finance ministry's feet to the fire over acts by its, sister agencies like the GRA or customs? Because it's like saying, yes, I'm a parent, I have a child, they must be accountable for their actions at whatever age they've reached. They are not, and that then becomes my burden. How is that fair on the finance ministry? If we should hold the GRA accountable for not doing their job, or we should hold customs accountable for not collecting at the borders. That's what I think. I'll come to you then.
Sure. We must hold all of them accountable. I have given you instances where the finance minister himself has questions to answer. When he gave that illegal instruction, which violated Section 69 of the Revenue Administration Act 2016, Act 915. He had no business writing that letter. You saw what he did in PDS. He had no business doing that, calling that meeting, which eventually became such an international embarrassment, and Ghana lost money. Any other country, for that conduct, the finance minister will be in court, answering to causing financial loss to the state. The millions of dollars we lost in the PDS scandal. I've talked about conflict of interest. Then don't forget PIAC. PIAC is still on the case of the finance minister about our oil receipts that have not been properly accounted for. So there's a litany that they themselves at the ministry, they have questions to answer. I've talked about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs phantom account in excess of 65 million Ghana cedis. That as we speak, the foreign minister and her team, and I believe them because there's no evidence that they received this money. So where is that 65 million Ghana cedis? Where did it go to? So they themselves have questions to answer. They are not leading by example. And then, you see, when you are the supervising minister, I mean, it's not for for nothing that you are referred to as supervising minister. You are in charge. The buck stops with you. So apart from you giving illegal and unlawful instructions, you must also make sure that the right thing is done. Why did they hound the former Auditor General out, for example? You know, so when you set that kind of example, you tell everybody, you know, that look, hey, this thing we have to be careful. If I want to save my job, if I don't want to end up like Dom Level, let me just, you know, follow the illegal instructions, and then let me just do whatever I want. So all of them, and of course agency heads as well. But you see, it all comes back to probably it is high time we stop even appointing
political appointees
at the Attorney General's department. You see, one of the things that we thought the OSP would do, the Office of Special Prosecutor, that independence, he's not in cabinet with his ministers, so he can, but unfortunately that office is still a pale shadow. It hasn't really fulfilled the hopes and dreams that we all have. I want to see a more aggressive, you know, special prosecutor who wades into these matters. At least the new one is showing some glimmer, you know, of hope. But there's more room for improvement. He still doesn't have a board. He doesn't have resources. We are deliberately starving the Office of a Special Prosecutor. So I don't blame him too much. He's doing his best under very terrible conditions. But you see, are we really committed or not? Look at, these are billions of Ghana cedis. And if we are able to just safeguard, protect the public purse, which we wouldn't be having the debt to GDP that we are having. You know, this economy, I mean, the levels of taxation, see where fuel prices have got into. So you must, all these things are related. Because if you have a leaking basket, and we think in this country that, so we should collect more, so e-levy, now we are talking about EJAPA, and what we are doing now is collateralizing and front-loading all our resources to spend today. We are not thinking about tomorrow, even with lands and all of that. And you see, let's remember that the Constitution, Article 36(1), says that the state shall take all necessary action to ensure that the national economy is managed in such a manner as to maximize the rate of economic development and to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every person in Ghana, and to provide adequate means of livelihood and suitable employment and public assistance to the needy. 36(2)E is my favorite. It says that the recognition that the most secure democracy is the one that assures the basic necessities of life for its people as a fundamental duty. It's a fundamental duty. We are running around saying if you see something, say something. We've launched a campaign against terrorism, and we think that the invaders will come from outside. This democracy is at risk. The anger, the despondency, the disillusionment of our political leadership, that is our real threat. When they see these reports, they see the billions and billions that, I mean, people cannot account for. That really is at the heart of all our threats.
All right. Let me read some text messages. We'll take a break, and then I'll come back to you. Okay. This one says, good morning, Jifa. I'm watching you live from OT region. Thank you very much. And that's Musa Mahwadu. He says, the Akufo-Addo government has not done enough for us. There's still a lot more they need to do. Musa Abatwa writes, I find it difficult to understand how does any responsible government, fully conscious of the challenges of our country, dish out huge sums of money on the blind side of Parliament, in reference to the cathedral. Well, we'll come to the cathedral project, but I'm only reading because it relates to what we are saying. It says, so for you, what kills your spirit is how so much money is being allocated elsewhere when there are particular needs. This one from Fidelis Abilba. This government is simply not prudent in spending our taxes. They need to improve. Abdul writes, the NPP communicators find it very difficult to defend their government when these issues emerge. Prince Henry for Koforidua says, some of the cash irregularities is because government is allocating funds for the payment of NAPCO trainees, and yet they are not using the money to pay these trainees. Another one is this $1 million per constituency. We've been told that monies have been allocated, yet we are yet to see where the monies have gone to. The future is pregnant. I think you've been watching Eduji Tamaklo a lot. This one from Aaron from Latebio Koshi. Ghana is located at a very vantage point within West Africa with its natural resources, its rich soil, its natural vegetation. We have what it takes as a nation without any external force or influence to build our economy and match the advanced economies. Soliciting aid from the IMF won't do us any good. We should not also run on the same tangent with other economies or copy what others are doing. We need to strengthen our environment and do more for ourselves. That's from Aaron. We'll bring you more messages. Some of you are already sending messages on the National Cathedral. No problem. You send them to us and we'll read them later on. We still have some 30 minutes on this segment. And a final message from Charles in the Bono region. He says, honestly, your panelists have made my day. The government of the day needs to enforce the law in order to curb this unnecessary financial recklessness in both the controller and the MMDAs. This total lack of compliance regarding laid down procurement procedure must be stopped. Thank you very much for your messages. We take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for joining us on the key points. Let me come to Dennis now. So I've seen and read some thoughts that we're not, and I know I asked that question to Ablakwa, but I would like to ask that to you as well, that we're not being fair to the likes of the Ministry of Finance, the Ministries of Health, the Ministries of Roads, Employment, because of the nature of the work they do. You cannot hang all these issues around the supervisory ministry. Let's be honest, the health ministry has Ghana Health Service and allied agencies as well. The same thing with roads. There's urban roads, feeder roads, all that. Then when you come to employment as well, that's even like when you talk about the significant amount of monies government spends, is also on emoluments and salaries. So what are your thoughts on those perspectives?
So I think apart from the Ministry of Finance that we can say that they perform a dual role, that is the role of an MDA themselves, that's the ministry, that's finance headquarters, like any other ministry. They also perform the role of central management agency for government, that is, they perform additional supervisory function on all other ministries. So for example, if the Ministry of Housing is engaging in maybe a project, sometimes the money will have to be managed by Ministry of Finance. So that gives them a dual role. Other ministry and other agencies may have some grants that needs to be managed, and that has to also be managed by the Ministry of Finance. So that's why in the report we mentioned that for the Ministry of Finance, we acknowledge that because they perform a dual role as a central management agency as well as an MDA, they are likely to lead the pack any day when some of these fiscal recklessness assessment is conducted, because when they manage a fund and it is misused, because they are the main managers, the irregularity will be traced to them. But that notwithstanding, because the main drivers of the irregularity is tax and cash irregularity, that the institutions that manage these irregularities are under their supervision, you would expect some level of improved monitoring and evaluation as well as internal controls. Now, when we say that, while we acknowledge that they perform dual role, then we drill down to look at what are the main drivers of this tax and cash irregularity. Because when you do that granular detail, then it raises a lot of questions about the people responsible for performing the quality assurance at the institutional level. So an issue like uncollected taxes on goods that left bonded warehouses. So the question is, the custom officers that were assigned to that post, how come the goods were removed from the bonded warehouse without the taxes duly paid? Again, if you look at the 2020 report by the Auditor General, it says that if you look at Thermal Refinery, default in payment of rescheduled debt owed by OMC, 69 million. That raised a question about who was monitoring this. And when there was the likelihood of default, who did the risk assessment? and what risk assessment report was raised or flagged to manage this likely default. So while we acknowledge that the Ministry of Finance performs that dual role, if you break down the irregularity in granular detail, then it raises a lot of lack of internal control and the fact that the internal audit system is not working effectively, because if it is, all the cash irregularities may not be happening, because if there's an internal auditor who has high decision-making powers and also who has control over how monies are collected and spent, then issues about payment without vouchers will never happen. Issues about misallocation of funds will never happen. Issues about people lodging public funds into their private accounts will never happen. And these are all captured in the Auditor General's report. If you come to the other ministries, there are no reasons why we should excuse them for being indisciplined in the use or in the management of our public resources. For example, if a ministry is captured in debt and loans, let me come to even the loans or advances to other staff or other agencies and are not recovered, it raises a question about your internal control system. If there's an issue about rent that's supposed to be collected that are not collected by that ministry, then it raises a lot of questions about your internal controls. So aside the Ministry of Finance, if you come to health, roads and highways, employment and foreign affairs, there can be no excuse. For example, if you look at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a procurement contract awarded in 2017 to a company that was not even registered, or the company that received a contract before registering, we can't say that amount of money paid to that company, while we clearly know that was a flagrant abuse of procurement law, we should excuse them. So for the other ministries, but even the Ministry of Finance, we are not excusing them from the irregularity, because when you break it down, it raises a lot of questions about internal controls.
Okay,
but for
you
the
talk
other,
about internal controls, and that's why it's unfortunate that Dr. Odrosai couldn't come, because one of the measures for dealing with these is internal audits.
Internal audits.
So there must be a good internal audit system before you even get to the full Auditor General phase. And what can we do to improve that? And I hope he's watching. Maybe he'll take some points from
I think, and we acknowledge the fact that some of his views were also captured in our report, where we engage the whole team. So we can give a little explanation as to why we are not seeing that. So at the moment, the MDs procure and pay through the GIFMIS. Now, the GIFMIS platform, that's where all the financing and the payment, everything is happening. But the internal audit agency or the internal auditor, who is supposed to quality assure all those processes, is not on that system. So people are making payments, committing government on the blind side of the internal auditors. What they are doing is firefighting. So the incidents occur, they write report, and because if you look at the organogram of these ministries, they do not have higher decision-making powers, they can't influence the final decision of their superiors. Another challenge too with the internal audit system is the lack of proper harmonization of their work. So if you go to the MMDA level, the internal auditors there are supervised or managed by the civil service or local government. Now you come to some of the MDAs that is managed by the internal audit agency. Then you go to the state-owned agencies, and they also report to SIGA. So there's a bit of the lack of harmonization, a disconnect in terms of their
they are all working in silos.
In terms of their supervision. So when the internal audit agency is working, it appears that it is working with a lot of institutions, and that is why we are not seeing efficient effect of the internal audit system in our MDs. And I tell you, if the internal audit system was working properly, as I've already mentioned, tax irregularities wouldn't be as they are. Procurement irregularities wouldn't be as they are, even in terms of contracts, because it is the internal auditor who will raise even the performance agreement. Because if we raise mobilization for a contractor and the service has not been fully completed, or the quality of work that we expect has not been achieved, then final payment will not be made. But because the internal audit function has not been strengthened to do that, that is why we are recording all of these irregularities. Another issue that we also raise is that if we don't promote the internal audit service bill that is currently being laid before Parliament, for them to become a service and have some level of independence, so that the internal auditors within this organization will have a sense of independence like the Ghana Audit Service or auditors, then what their work will always be compromised, because at the end of the day, when they are going to report to their leaders, they may face some sort of scare or their leaders may threaten them, sometimes even with promotion and other issues. So they do not have the full confidence and independence to do their work. So until we put the internal auditors on the gift list for them to see what is being procured, what is being paid, what kind of documents support the payment. Because if you look at the Auditor General's report, and recently, I think the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, I think just yesterday or so, cautioned some district officers that they should take the internal audit serious, as well as the fact that provide all documents when audit is being conducted. Because one of the issues that they identified is that the irregularities occur because the agencies do not have documents to support even payments that have been made. And if there's an internal auditor who has the power and independence to do his work, that cannot happen, because before he approves the payment, he will have to see the voucher supporting each particular transaction. And because they are not part of the process, all of these things are happening, and we will continue to record these irregularities until we put them on the platform, and not just that, give them that superior power so that they report directly to the internal audit agency to avoid any influence by their superiors within the institutions.
All
and
right.
Let me go a little back to the response of the Deputy Finance Minister.
Okay, you want to address something there?
One thing I also want to address is that, for example, if people default paying of taxes, and that is about 69 million Ghana cedis, almost half of how much the Ministry of Gender spent on LEAP in 2019, is the Deputy Minister saying that because it can be recovered, the full financial effect and the social effect of people failing to pay these taxes can be recovered. So if people delay and government is unable to raise that mobilization, and for that matter, sometimes LEAP cash transfers have to be delayed for some time so that they pay in double of some of the payment tranches. Is the Deputy Minister saying that that is fair? What the fiscal recklessness is pointing us to the fact is that the sustainability threats we face as a country are enormous. At the moment, we need to raise annually about $43 billion if we can finance all the SDGs. Else we are going to miss on key SDGs like zero hunger, no poverty, creating sustainable cities, and look at the risk of climate change that we are facing. I recently saw an article that even concluded that the whole Accra is even sinking because 1 hour of rain and the whole country is flooded. And what we are pointing to is that there are enormous resources within our system. Before we start going outside to raise debt, before we start going outside to chase on grants, let's look at within our MDs. How are people using these funds judiciously? How are we collecting the revenues that are due government? These are not monies that are, it's not as if they are not due government. These are monies due the state that are needed to finance the expenditure of MDs. And if we are not collecting them, that is what the fiscal recklessness is pointing us to.
Okay. Let me read this message from the MP for Bulsa South, Dr. Clement Apak. He's a member of the Public Accounts Committee. He says, Imani is spot on. I'll be urging the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee to invite Imani to do a presentation for the committee. The levels of infractions have increased substantially in the past few years. What exposes the current government as enhancing the dissipation of public funds is the strange refusal by the current Auditor General to fully implement the power to surcharge. This is even after the Supreme Court made it clear that indeed the AG has such powers. Mr. Domlevo started giving effect to this power after the Apex Court affirmed same in a case brought by Occupy Ghana. Since Mr. Domlevo went after the senior minister to refund $100 million paid to Kroll and Associates for no work done and was hounded out, his replacement has gone mute on surcharging. Interestingly, the departure of Mr. Domlevo under very uncanny circumstances, procedures, and sudden emergence of documents to later exonerate the senior minister. It's clear that government itself is most complicit in promoting the dissipation of public funds. And that's from Dr. Clement Apak, the MP for Bulsa South. Yes, Honorable Kujato Ablakwa, one of the things I guess we have to consider going forward is how do we stop this? Now, Dennis refers to continual acquisition of debt, because what it means is if we are not mobilizing internally, MMDAs, if they can negotiate on their own or not, they acquire debt. I'm a bit overwhelmed as to ask, how do we even stop this? We cannot stop projects. We cannot stop roads. We cannot stop schools, hospitals, and the like. but I guess it's worrisome that these levels are not sustainable.
And Jifa, as Dennis reminds us about how this will continue to compound our debt crisis, let's remember that this week, the CFR Sovereign Risk Index.
What is the CFR Sovereign Risk Index?
It assesses your ability to pay back your debts.
Okay.
And so it has various, various categories. Those who are most at risk, and it lists 10 countries that are most at risk of defaulting on their debts, like Argentina did some time ago, Greece did a few years ago, Sri Lanka in debt crisis now, and sadly, Ghana is ranked number 2, 10 most at risk. Argentina is number 1. Then you have Ghana, Lebanon, Pakistan, Russia, Sri Lanka, Tunisia, Ukraine, Venezuela, and Egypt. So what Dennis is saying is a real threat is upon us. And the last time I was looking at the numbers, our revenues are not even enough.
They peaked at 9.8 billion.
To pay for even the interest payments on these loans that we have accumulated. So this is a very, very, very crucial matter. We must plug the loopholes immediately. And
is it the loopholes or the international community are also squeezing us, giving us extremely high, interest rates in comparison to our counterparts from Asia?
Yeah, but they look at all these things.
They look at what? How we spend money or waste money?
Yes,
the ability to pay.
Yeah,
and how much you able to raise.
I mean, risk levels. If your Auditor General is reporting this, if your financial situation is in such a messy state that even your statutory obligations, you can't meet it. You collect money for health insurance. The last time I looked at the numbers, the Ministry of Finance has failed to release 2 billion, a whopping 2 billion Ghana cedis of what has been collected for the National Health Insurance. Get Fund, they are not paying. District Assembly Common Fund is in arrears. So MP's Common Fund is in arrears, more than 2 quarters. So they see all these things. They have country reps and they know what is going on. So you see, if there's any matter that we must resolve immediately, it is about blocking the loopholes. And we must start retrievals immediately. We must also punish. The president's attitude must change. This defensive posture and always quick to defend appointees, defend my own, must change. Let the Office of Special Prosecutor go after all of these people. Then Parliament, I want to appeal to my own institution. If you look at Article 1876, I think that in the next few days, I will make a special appeal to the Right Honourable Speaker that this must be activated. Article 1876 says that Parliament shall debate the report of the Auditor General and appoint, where necessary, in the public interest, a committee to deal with any matters arising from it. This has never been done since the 1992 Constitution was promulgated. Where we have reached now, these levels, and now that we are on the CFR index, we are in the league of countries like, Sri Lanka, Argentina, Pakistan, such an infamous league. This is scary. It is time to activate this constitutional provision. Let's have a special parliamentary committee to go into these matters and come up with far-reaching recommendations.
Why would we do that when the finance minister announced measures only in March meant to save the economy, curbing travel, curbing fuel allocations, cutting back budgetary allocations by 30%, ensuring that, there are no sets up of new, agencies. Yeah. You are not convinced?
It's a sham. Look, we'll be discussing the cathedral soon, and you'll see what is going on. Even now, when we say that we are cutting down expenditure, we are now taking taxpayer funds and paying for private initiatives without any recourse to Parliament, to the Constitution of Ghana, to our public procurement laws. There are other matters we'll be revealing in the coming days. If you see how much has even been spent on flight tickets alone, despite these measures. Look, it's clear that these measures are largely, window dressing. It's a charade. And you see, it only relates to government expenditure. But now we are talking about what has left the stable, the resources that have been wasted. How do we retrieve them? And how do we punish people so that it will serve as a deterrent? So that those who think that in this country, when you do the right thing rather, then you are a fool. Yeah. And then we've, even over the years, we have all kinds of sayings, Aban Ejuma dear, be a Didi one Ejuma, and all kinds of, very poor orientation, analogies that have come up over the years. So it is time, honestly, to have a new leadership response. We must change paths, and let's see the president deal with. Look, there is enough evidence to, as it were, go after people, retrieve these funds, and that you'll see the ripple effect, how people will start changing their attitudes. And all of these, poor international reports and ratings, all the downgrades by the likes of Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and all of them, it will begin to reflect positively. So that's what we have to do. Nobody is convinced. When you have the World Bank, openly saying that funds they are releasing are not being utilized, and agencies that should be lead agencies don't know about it. It tells you that they have even had enough. They can't take it any longer. So a new leadership response. We know what to do. Let's do it. Let's sanction. Let's punish. Let us retrieve. The Constitution is clear. Occupy Ghana went to court. There is a judgment that we can use to retrieve. Dom Levo was doing that very well. His only mistake is that he tried to retrieve from the senior minister, Osafo Mafu. He didn't believe that some people are untouchable. And that is where his woes began. But you see, all of these things must change so that we can get our money back.
All right. Brief points, final point from you, Dennis.
So I think,
look ahead.
I won't repeat all the recommendations Honorable have mentioned. I think our support is call for the sanctioning, because that's the only thing that can deter people. Then let's strengthen the internal controls. Again, the mobilization targets must be realistic so that MDAs do not plan expenditure that they cannot raise money to finance. So that will lead to them falling on government statutory funds that they collect, leading to these cash irregularities. But I mean, on top of it, it's enforcing compliance and the sanction. That if you disallow and you surcharge, next time people will be very mindful when they are using public funds. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And let me just read some last bits of messages before we go on to our next segment. This one from Jason from Twitter. He asks, who is actually diverting these funds for his or her selfish gains, and trainees are suffering? This one says, this country called Ghana is really suffering. Sometimes I shed tears when I hear the volumes of monies that go missing. Meanwhile, the country needs money to solve its problems, and a few are just misusing our resources. Those were some of your messages from Twitter. Thank you very much. Many of you have sent your messages ahead of the next topic, which is about the National Cathedral. I've picked them up. I'll read them to you from both Twitter, Facebook, and from our WhatsApp line. But thanks to Dennis Asare, Principal Researcher with IMANI, for joining us. Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa remains with us, and we'll come back with our next panel. Joe Jackson will join us after the break. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for staying with us, and thanks for joining us on our second segment. And just to remind you that you can send your WhatsApps and your Twitter messages, as well as your Facebook messages. I'll read them. I have some of them. I'll read them later. But first, after allocating millions in prime land, among other support for the National Cathedral project, the issue is back in the news following the leaking of a document allegedly authorizing the payment of some 25 million Ghana cedis as seed capital for the cathedral project. The timing couldn't be much worse because the country is in the depths of financial challenges. It's a time where NAPCO trainees, national service personnel, teacher trainee allowances, school feeding, caterers all require one outstanding payment or the other, or an upward adjustment. Many question the actions of government in regard to this project, which has already been allocated lots of prime land, among other support. The optics don't just look good. Well, there's been no clear response from government, save for the Deputy Finance Minister, beg your pardon, indicating that a seed amount had been promised and it's been provided for as a priority project. A priority project or a prestige project that public funds should be paying for? Well, those are the questions. And one of the persons who raised this issue is the Honorable Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. So do we know for a fact that these monies have been paid by the Finance Minister?
Absolutely. We intercepted the first document, that is the 25 million Ghana cedis, which we made public, called a press call in Parliament. We were outraged because, as parliamentarians, we have not approved this withdrawal from the consolidated fund.
Does this require parliamentary approval?
All use of public funds. Indeed, if you look at Article 178 of the 1992 Constitution, it provides no monies shall be withdrawn from the consolidated fund except A, to meet expenditure that is charged on that fund by this Constitution or by an act of Parliament. That is the Appropriation Act. I have copies of the Appropriation Act here. You go through all the Appropriation Acts,
There's
which
no
I have here.
there.
Yes, you can go through no amount for the...
But we do know that there was a reference in the 2019 budget.
Where the issue of those monies has been authorized by an Appropriation Act or by supplementary estimate approved by resolution of Parliament passed for the purpose. We've gone through all of that. I mean, we have been in the House. I'm a third-term member of Parliament. There is no such approval.
Okay, but what about the 2019 budget where we were told that there will be an allocation for a seed fund? The only thing I know was there was no specific amount put to it.
Yes. So you see, I have that was in the speech, the budget speech of the minister.
Yes.
You know that because the budget is very voluminous. This is for example, the 2022 budget, very voluminous. He can't come and stand and read all of this. So for the speech, when you go through the budget, you will not see this. For the speech, he said at paragraph 157 of the speech, Mr. Speaker, the President is determined that the building of the National Cathedral will not put undue financial burdens on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. The formal launch of this national fundraising campaign is slated for December 28, 2018 in Ghana and February 2019 in the United States. This National Cathedral Partnership Framework operationalizes and indeed is practical expression of the social partnership envisaged to foster participatory development of country as our collective goal. So that's what he said in the 2019 budget speech, which he presented in 2018, specifically on the Thursday, 15th November 2018. Now, it is important to emphasize that if you look at the background of this project, it started as a private initiative. Indeed, I have a press cutting here where government not using taxpayers' money to build National Cathedral August 27, 2018. This is from Adom Online.
Oh, it's okay, you can credit them. That's fine.
Immediate past General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana, Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, says government will not pay for the yet-to-be-built National Cathedral. Speaking on Asempa FM's Ekosi Sen show on Monday, Dr. Opuni Frimpong said President Akufo-Addo will only facilitate the acquisition of land for the project, but will not finance it as is being speculated in the public domain. So this has been the assurance all along. Remember, the president himself said this is a personal pledge he made to the Almighty that if he blesses him with the presidency, he will build a cathedral for him. He mobilized the Christian community, the pastors, reverend ministers. They set up a private board of trustees, private. So it didn't come to parliament for approval, because if it's going to be public, you're going to collect funds. That's why you have parliamentary approval. Remember that all the other funds that were established, even the COVID funds, it came to parliament because those are public and you are going to be administering those funds in our name. But this one, private initiative, so no parliamentary approval. Everything was done privately. And that's we're all under the impression that it's a private initiative. All of us as Christians will contribute. Then we saw a shift, the beginning of some shift in mindset when the 2019 budget was being presented by this speech. But you see, this only provided intention. We hope to form a partnership. No numbers were given in the budget. So I have here another press cutting. During the debate on the 2019 budget, Dr. Dominic Ayeni drew attention. He's a ranking member of the Constitutional and Legal. He said that, look, disbursing funds to construct cathedral without Parliament's approval, an issue of accountability. Former Deputy Attorney General and Member of Parliament for Bolga is Dr. Dominic Ayeni, has stated that the attempt by government to allocate a seed money for the construction of the National Cathedral is unconstitutional and an issue of accountability. Dr. Ayeni indicated that there is no line item of seed money in the 2019 budget statement and economic policy with respect to the construction of the National Cathedral. Debating at the plenary on the 2019 budget statement economic policy of the government, Honorable Ayeni pointed out that there is critical issue of accountability and that the minister cannot purport on behalf of Parliament to disburse funds for the construction of the cathedral without prior approval of the House. So we warned in 2019 that, look, do the right thing. If you are now having some paradigm shift, it's no longer wholly private funded enterprise. You want to bring in the state in a partnership, provide a line item, let us know. As I speak to you as a member of Parliament, I do not know the total cost of this cathedral. Sometimes you see $100 million, sometimes you see $200 million, sometimes you see $350 million. There's been all kinds of figures bandied about outside Parliament. So even that partnership, what does it entail? The contribution of the Ghanaian taxpayer, how much is it? I don't know as a member of Parliament. Whether it's 5 million, 10 million, whether it's 20%, 30%, I do not know. And you see, to make matters worse, Jifa, yesterday, we intercepted another document which we have made public. The 25 million Ghana cedis, which has caused so much outrage, is not the only. Indeed, if you read that letter carefully, the second paragraph, the finance minister said as additional seed money, which means that other allocations have been made. So we intercepted this document from the office of the president, which reveals that Sir David Ajay and Associates Limited have been paid a whopping, a staggering 32,070,103 Ghana cedis and 2 pesos for what they describe as payment of consultancy services on new bids opening and interviewing of contractors rendered on the National Cathedral project. 32 million Ghana cedis. So if you add this 32 million to the 25 million that the finance minister asked the controller and accountant general to release, and that money has been paid, dated 31st March 2022, you have 57 million Ghana cedis. And next week, we will put out more amounts of money that has been paid. So
but I'm just wondering, are you surprised that monies have been paid to Sir David Ajay? Because there is no way he could have provided the architectural drawings and all that without any payments made after.
But But you see, you tell us that this is a private initiative. You set up private board of trustees. So when it's a private initiative, the public procurement law doesn't apply because you are not using public funds. But now you are using public funds and paying to these contractors who apparently appear to have been contracted by the board of trustees. Such a murky, unconstitutional arrangement. Look, if government realizes that the fundraising effort is not going well, you want the Ghanaian people to help you build this cathedral, level up with us. Come open and say that, look, Ghanaians, we know 71% of you are Christians. Do you think this is a priority? Let's have a national debate that despite our floods, despite the fact that this cathedral may be even flooded and people cannot even go there and worship with this, terrible flooding situation where we can't invest in engineering solutions, despite the fact that NAPCO trainees have not been paid, national service personnel, all of these are financial challenges that we have. We think that this is still a priority. I know of many other countries who have suspended national projects to focus on the needs of the people now. Because in any case, that's what the Bible says in Matthew chapter 25, that take care of the least amongst you, take care of the vulnerable first. That if you didn't do it for them, you didn't do it for me. And nothing you do will please me. You won't make it to heaven. Matthew 25, 31 to 46 is very clear. So let's have that national debate, you transparently, and then we know how much the states will spend on this project. It is budgeted for. And then you make releases. But you don't flagrantly violate Article 178. You don't violate our public procurement law. And you see, what is even worrying about this David Ajay payment is that at the time in 2021, we paid him this 32 million Ghana cedis. He had not been inducted. I know he's a celebrated, we all know him, award-winning architect. He's done work in Europe and America. Nobody can take that pedigree away from him. But you see, just like lawyers, just like doctors, when you want to practice in Ghana, you come back home, you must meet the licensing requirements. It was only on the 26th of April, 2022, just a few weeks ago, that this is Daily Graphic report, David Ajay inducted Architects Register. An international acclaimed Ghanaian British architect said David Ajay has been inducted into the standing register of the Architects Registration Council. The induction ceremony took place in Accra last Sunday after he was registered as an architect by the council to enable him to practice in the country as mandated by law. This Daily Graphic report. The minister was there commending him, presenting his certificate to him. And yet, a year earlier, he had been given 32 million. And remember, he's been given the Agenda 111 contract, trade fair contract, and all of that, when he was not licensed legally to practice. So, you see, all manner of laws are being broken. And you see, this is National Cathedral, where we'll go and ask for forgiveness, confess our sins, ask for the Lord's blessings. If there is any project that should be squeaky clean, that should be holy, should be pure, as Paul told the Philippians, if there should be any project that should be of good report, it should be this project. This project should not be subjected to the usual shenanigans, the lawlessness, the corruption, breaking of the constitution and legal breaches, procurement law and all of that. This project should not be one that should attract these things.
Okay, that's a nice point for me to pause.
And yet, that is what we are seeing.
Okay. Mr. Joe Jackson, welcome and thanks for joining us on Key Points. Do you share the outrage that many, have expressed since day before yesterday and yesterday about the cathedral project?
I have serious concerns. I really have serious concerns. And those concerns are about, it is really to do with our priorities. Mm-hmm. And like you said at the beginning, the optics of this for the Ghanaian public. And my concerns are around the issue that these are tough times for our country. And we need everyone to pull together. This is a time for us to come together to attempt to fix the challenges that we face. Now, when there's when there's this perception that our leadership may not necessarily have the same concerns that we have, then we have a problem. Now, let's take the issue. Really, one of the things that we should all be clear, it's not an issue about the cathedral. It's not, and the funds, public funds, are not about Christianity or your faith. I'm a Christian. I'm a proud Christian. The thought of a cathedral pleases me. I may even put my own money as a donation. But that's not the issue at stake. And let's be clear. Even if we had to build a cathedral, even the very Bible wants us to be prudent with our finances. And that if you're building a house, you should make sure you have the money ready. If you're going to war, make sure the money is ready. You must lend to abound and abase. And we could go on and on about the verses that we are paraphrasing that talk about prudence. Key thing is that at this moment, where we have arrears of national service persons, where we have arrears of NAPCO, where we are so challenged in public finances that we've had to push through the e-levy against the obvious opposition of a lot of Ghanaians. Is this the time to be allocating funds to the National Cathedral? Now, let's be clear. At least what I have seen is 25 million. In the grand scheme of things, 25 million is not a lot of money. We have bigger problems. I mean, if you look at it, we have 86,000 national service graduates, national service personnel who are being paid an average of 550?
569.
Call it. So even their monthly remuneration is around 47 million cedis per month. So it's not as if this amount could clear that arrears for a month, and it's more than a month's arrears, or NAPCO, or any of the other issues. It's a drop in the ocean. But at the same time, you ask yourself, at a time when we are so challenged, is this what we should be doing?
But the area is already under construction. Buildings where judges were resident have been torn down. The project needs to move on.
No,
I think that
the project may not necessarily need to move on. If you're prudent and we are challenged and we accept that we have had external challenges that we didn't have control over COVID. The Ukraine war is not ours. We can come to the table and say, you know what? We said we'll do this, but can we put it on hold? Can we put it aside for this moment and face the pressing challenges? You see, when I go to the market for food and my funds don't meet 3 square meals a day, then somehow when you allocate money to a cathedral, it almost seems as if, don't you understand my pain? Don't you understand what we are going through? Shouldn't you be more mindful of you see, again, let's be clear. It's not as if 25 million will take this country out of where it was. Even if it was $25 million.
It's now 57 if you add the...
Well, but the issue is that it's again the optics. And continuously, we see, and you have to ask yourself, okay, so how does this, for example, figure in the 30% that was...
The cut in expenditures.
Thank you. Does it mean that it was supposed to be around 50 million and it was cut to 25? Or what exactly? See, there's so many issues, and I'll be frank with you. I'll be glad if the Minister of Information or anybody else will come and speak to this issue. Not again. Let's be clear. 25 million won't change our lives. But when I'm in pain, right? And a lot of Ghanaians are in pain. A lot of Ghanaians may have to skip meals because of the huge increases in food prices. And the sad thing is that those things are not going to, see, what upsets everybody is that they're not going to stop. We know that the producer price index has even gone up again. We know that come the end of June, we will see another increase in the producer price index.
And the inflation
rate, because it hasn't taken care of the recent fuel price increases. We know the challenges we are going through. And it is on the basis of these challenges that we say, is this the right thing to do? It's on the basis of the collective pain that as Ghanaians we are facing that we say, maybe not. Maybe let's put this cathedral on a back burner.
So for you, putting it on hold for now, for the meantime, would be preferred?
Absolutely.
All right. Let me read some text messages and then we'll speak to the Honorable MP for Tafo, Echo Vincent Asefwa. This one from Anefi in Tamale says, good morning, Jifa. This is a clear display of lack of concern by leadership. How can you invest money in a cathedral at this difficult time? Sule Naza writes, with all the million problems that we are facing at the country, we think the National Cathedral is our solution. Seriously, I can't wrap my head around this issue. That's from Sule. David Edu from Tema West writes, in the face of excruciating economic hardships, the executive arm of government finds it prudent to appropriate funds for a national cathedral in contravention of Article 179 and procurement procedures. The financial recklessness and imprudent use of the country's financial resources in the face of priority-based projects is very retrogressive. This one has a strange name, once a red, still a red. It's from Twitter. It says, I can't believe they demolished new buildings for judges to build a cathedral. So far, it has not put food on the table of foot soldiers. This one from James. In fact, some of the internal auditors at the MMDAs are also a bit corrupt, hence the financial recklessness we've experienced. They are not doing their work well, and that is part of our financial loss. Charles from Bono region. Good morning, Jifa. The 25 million being released by government in aid of the National Cathedral is a misplaced priority. This is because nurses, trainees, NAPCO, teacher trainees have not received their monies, and national service persons are also being left down the drain. Obing from Ahafo, NSS personnel have not been paid outstanding arrears and current 2 months arrears, and you have a huge sum to construct a cathedral. That's a question from Obing. And this one from Charles, it says, okay, I've read that already. This one rather from Prince Henry in Koforidua. President Akufo-Addo pays 25 million Ghana cedis for cathedral, but can't pay 97 pesos per child for school feeding. He can't also print textbooks for basic schools since 2018. He can't pay NAPCO trainees and youth in afforestation. Where are we headed? Thank you very much for your messages. Let's speak to the Honorable Asefwa. Good morning to you, Honorable Asefwa, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jifa.
Thank you. Fine, thank you. Thanks for asking. So there seems to be an overwhelming disaffection since news broke that some 25 million has been allocated by the finance minister for the National Cathedral. We've not paid NAPCO trainees, national service arrears, teacher trainee, school feeding program, NHIS arrears. I can go on and on and on. What are your thoughts from the government side about this and the way it looks?
Well, Jifa, let me say a very good morning to you and to your cherished viewers and to my senior colleagues, Mablakwa and Jackson. I took the opportunity to listen to my brother Kuduto. But before I attempt to respond, let me state that people say that Ghana is a secular state. Just to borrow the word of Professor Onyinka, when he said that Ghana is a pluralistic state, which means that We believe in God through other means, whether traditional means, that is through spirit, whatever you. And so, having that background, it is not a misplaced priority for Ghana as a state to commit to the building of the National Cathedral. But I find it very difficult whether I am sitting in a different chamber, that is Parliament, from what the Honorable Okudato Ablakwa said, when he alludes to the fact that when he alludes to the fact that government has previous occasions made mention of the fact that we were not going to commit state resources to the building of the National Cathedral. I hold in my hand the Parliamentary Hansard of 19th February 2019. And if you check that Hansard very well, and let me quote what the Finance Minister said in Parliament. He said that, Mr. Speaker, the state is facilitating this process by providing the land, the secretariat, and seed money, emphasis money, seed money for the preparatory phase. It has never been the statement of government or the finance minister or even President Akufo-Addo that government is not going to commit a penny to it. The narrative has always been that government is going to partner with faith-based organizations, private sector, to be able to put up this National Cathedral. What government has always been saying, which I think that the Honorable Okudato Ablakwa, my senior brother, probably did not avert his mind to, was the fact that government said that we are going to provide land, we will provide a secretariat, and also provide a seed money for the preparatory phase or stage for the building of the National Cathedral. And if you also check the letter that was written by the Honorable Foyata, which is signed on the 31st March 2022, the heading of that letter, which he referred to a statement, or if you like, a letter from the Chief of Staff's office, that seed money for the construction of the National Cathedral, which is in consonance with what the Finance Minister said in Parliament on the 19th of February 2019. And so it cannot be that government is doing anything at variance with what it said. Government is in line with what it has already said. Government is in line with what he already promised the people of Ghana, and it is not doing anything different from what they said. I am listening to commentaries, especially from the Honorable Okudato Ablakwa and my senior brother, Mr. Jackson, of a certain misplaced priority. And I even heard you also reiterate the same fact. In fact, the Honorable Okudato Ablakwa mentioned or alluded to Matthew chapter 31, verse 46. If we have to also assist ourselves, we may also avert our mind to Matthew chapter 25, verse 35 to 40. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. This is a biblical statement, which I believe that His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, when the NPP government had lived in within that tenet. Why will I say that? We lived in a country whereby for a period of 10 years, we were losing prospective students at the level of the senior high school, about 100,000 of them. What it means is that every year, 100,000 of our young men and young women were not able to go to school, and it took a government in 2017, a political decision which was made for that matter, that this year I am going to give free education to our young men and young women. This is within the tenets of Matthew chapter 25, verse 35 to 40, that we won't allow people not to go to school because there's lack of resources or finances. And for that matter, there seems not to be some amount of equity and they cannot go to school because their parents are deprived. Their parents are not having the requisite resources and finances to be able to take their wards to school. And the statistics from the Ministry of Education, which I worked, was that every year, 100,000 of our young men and young women were not able to go to school. Today, if any child is not able to go to school at the level of the secondary school, then it means that it is the sole decision of that child who decides or who has decided not to go to school. So we have lived within the tenets of Matthew chapter 25, verse 35. Again,
Honorable Asefo, allow me to come in here, please, because you raised two separate issues. You talk about the priority bit and what was referenced in Parliament. It is true, and I think Honorable Ablakwa did reference the fact that the minister came to the House and indicated what was being done, which is the land, the secretariat, seed money. Government did not announce a specific amount. Can you tell me here and now that a specific amount had been announced? Can you tell me here and now that there's a specific amount that even you as a member of Parliament together with your colleagues have approved? The hue and cry is that no specific amount had been agreed and approved, and hence we could see what may be 25 million today becoming 100 million tomorrow, and that is the issue that people are raising.
Well, I think that there have been 3 urgent questions that have been filed in Parliament seeking to get some responses or answers to this particular question that you've raised. Why don't we wait for the Minister of Finance himself to be in Parliament to address that? Having said that, if you check the 31st March 2022 letter that was written by the Honorable Minister, Ken Oforiatta, item number 2, it reads, authority is hereby granted you to release the sum of 25 billion Ghana cedis as additional seed money to the National Cathedral Secretariat for the construction of the National Cathedral for part payment of outstanding claims. Emphasis my part payment. So this clearly means that the 25 million cannot be the exact amount that can be termed as the seed money. No, what it means is that there is a certain amount of seed money which you and I cannot be sure about. And I'm sure that when the Finance Minister comes to Parliament, probably next week or the next, Finance Ministry should be able to put that figure out for us to understand the proper perspective, what the seed money is. But my interest is
Honorable Asefo, I'm glad you've said that because Honorable Asefo, I'm glad you've said that because the reality then is that there is no clear figure on what the seed amount is. And if we are operating in a fair, open and transparent manner, that must be laid before the representatives of the people, yourselves in Parliament who are acting on our behalf. On the issue of free SHS, I think many Ghanaians support it. And that is why they voted Mr. Akufo-Addo and his government into office to implement free SHS. And so I don't think there's an issue there about we don't have enough resources and so free SHS is expensive or other. I think we've crossed that bridge. But I think the concern now is that looking forward, is this cathedral project going to be a public funded project? If it is, probably the government has to come back to the House to seek approval for those funds to support the construction of the project.
No, I think I would disagree with you on that. I mentioned the free SHS policy based on the commentaries by the Honorable Gov't that we have a misplaced priority. And I'm also telling you that across the globe, there isn't a single country which is not having any problems, or no country is living in autarky. You cannot say that you don't have challenges, especially in the times of COVID-19 and the Ukrainian war. It cannot be. And so the fact that there are some challenges with respect to some statutory payments like NAPCO and what have you, doesn't mean that we cannot do other things. Why? In this country, and the history will tell us, when have we been current on NHIS? How the NHIS structure is. There cannot be any instance whereby any government will be current with respect to this payment. So I was making a point that the the assertion that government is having a misplaced priority, and for that matter, we are not doing much for the people, we are not doing anything for the people, and the people probably need something better than a national cathedral, which government is prioritizing. I sought to disagree on that point, that there are a lot of social interventions that we've done for the people, and for that matter, at this point in time, we thought that the commitment that we made on the floor of Parliament that we are going to provide seed money should be provided, and so and that should be underscored. Again, for issues of transparency,
yes,
that government should be able to give an exact figure of how much we are using, especially when Parliament is also not aware of the amount, the exact amount that we are using. That is a fair question. That is why I'm also telling you that maybe there's something that you and I may not be aware. Why don't we wait for the Minister of Finance to appear in Parliament next week or the next, so that the Finance Minister will be able to lay the issues in proper perspective.
So is this going to become a public-funded project, the National Cathedral project? Is it going to become a public-funded project then, and not the partnership?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Finance Minister and the government, by extension, we have always maintained that this is supposed to be a state-private partnership, and that is how come we had to raise funds here locally in Ghana. You remember the United States of America fundraising that we also embarked on, and so it is not something that government is going to, as it were, engage itself so much into it. Largely, it is supposed to be financed by private sector, faith-based organizations, because as I speak, I know that some payments or some commitments have been made by the Seventh-day Adventist organization, or if you like, the church, and there are other churches are also following suit. And so it cannot be accepted in any way that government is the one going to finance this. No, government's commitment to the National Cathedral is only a seed money just for the preparatory stage, and also to provide the land and the secretariat for it. Any assertion that government is engaging, or if you like, government is putting so much money, or government is putting a lot of money into the National Cathedral, is one that is supposed to be discounted. We disagree with that. We are just providing the seed money. But I agree with you on the fact that there should be some amount of exactitude there as to how much government is actually committing to what it calls the seed money.
Final question, Mr. Assefuah. Joe Jackson has suggested that, look, we are in difficult times, and it's no secret. And now we are even listed on an index that demonstrates that we may be among a group of countries, 10 of them, that are at high risk of defaulting on our external debt. Isn't it an option to suspend the project for now? It won't be the first project to be on hold until there are funds available.
If I didn't get a clear of the question, I just got the latter part. If you can get
all right, okay, I'll just make it simpler. Should the cathedral project be put on hold, as being suggested by Mr. Jackson, because times are hard? There's just not enough money to do this prestige, personal pledge project at this time.
Well, I mean, it can be a conversation that we can have, but to put it in proper perspective. If you look at the amount that the National Cathedral Managed Trust Board of Trustees are trying to raise, we are talking about $315 million. $350 million as compared to about $3 million that have been paid by government as seed money, because the simple exchange rate of 25 million Ghana cedis could be about 3 million. Yes, that's about $3 million, and so $3 million as compared to $350 million, which the anticipation of government is that the rest of the $300 million is supposed to be provided by faith-based organizations and private sector partnership. I don't see the real impact on the nation's first, because this is a microcosm of the whole amount of money we are talking about here. But Mr. Jackson is making a good point. I think that government may also look at it, because genuinely, government has already underscored the difficulties that we are going through as a nation, and not just Ghana. Other countries are going through the same thing. I watched a video yesterday of a man who has been arrested or who went to a herbalist or a shrine to go and sacrifice his daughters for juju money. This is a man who came from Abroche, if I should put it that way. And everybody is thinking that if you're in Abroche, things are supposed to be good for you. So it underscores the challenges that we are finding ourselves as the global community, that nowhere we are having challenges and we are having difficulties everywhere. And so it cannot be identical to only Ghana. And that does not also mean that we cannot do other things as a nation if we are having difficulties.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Vincent Eko Asefwa, who is the MP for Tafo. Let me come to Joe Jackson. So it's clear there's no specific amount.
There's no specific amount.
As seed money.
And seed money. And listen, the cathedral project can go ahead on private funding, but the government should suspend its participation because it has bigger issues at stake. It's that simple. When I promised to assist you in building a house, now I have fires burning in my house that I have to quench. I'll tell you, oh, you know what, Jifa, please, if you can raise other money, continue with building your house. At the appropriate time, when I am in a more comfortable situation than I am now, I will continue with the seed money I've given to you. In any case, forgive me, but the temple of the Lord should be built by the children of the Lord, not by Caesar.
The amounts budgeted, initially it was a 100 million project. And then later on, I had 200 million. Honorable Asefwa is now saying 350.
It doesn't matter. So long as, for me, it doesn't matter. Listen, the bigger, the richer the cathedral, so long as it is from private money, please. And as a Christian, you should sacrifice to build the temple of the Lord. But I'm saying not from public money. That's the difference. Not from public money. They can go ahead. The cathedral should go ahead. They have a private board. They should do all they want to do. But public money is for a particular purpose. And there's a legitimate concern to say, if it's public money, then follow the rules we have all agreed for the spending of public money. Follow the rules. Tell us what the total commitment on this side is. Tell us how for the parts that we are playing, did it go through procurement? Or was it a donation to the, because listen, the government could be making a donation to a private project. That's possible. But let it not seem as if we are doing this with public funds. And let it be clear, we are making a donation to a private project. That's possible. Right? But at this moment, when things are tough, should we be making donations?
And that said, though, there's something about the amounts that Honorable Kuchetu Ablakwa pointed us to, the amounts paid to Sir David Ajay. I mean, if we then want to do all this calculation, what may have been paid to Sir David Ajay, this 25 million, the cost of the land near the International Conference Center, we all know that's significant prime land that costs millions and millions of dollars. I'm just wondering, what would it take to get the government reined in and say that, look, you've reached your threshold, let's draw a line under it and end it there?
You see, I even want to draw a line here. Some monies were spent, reallocation, etc. earlier. But then we are in a particular situation that started from 2020 with COVID, followed by the war, followed by our runaway inflation, our challenge CD, and we could go on and on and on. We're saying that in this present crisis, please, I want to help you. I'm a Christian. I want to donate money to a project in church, but I'm under tremendous difficulties. I may pay my tithe, I may make but that large donation I promised, hold on.
All right.
That's what we're asking for.
All right. Let me just read these messages and then I'll come to the Honorable Okujetu Ablakwa, who will leave us in some 7 minutes because he has another appointment. This one from Godwin in Boku says, Jifa, good morning. The insensitivity of the current administration is too much. They have no empathy for us ordinary Ghanaians. Ghanaians have seen the extent of their insensitivity and will take action in 2024. This one from Gideon from the Volta region. Does the government have a scale of preference that they always have to check regularly according to the dynamic conditions in this country? James from Bolga writes, I don't get it. How can you use state money to fulfill a personal vow to God? So everybody in Ghana who has a vow with God today can table a proposal for government to finance it. The National Cathedral was not a campaign promise to Christians, so I don't see where the government comes in. Mahama from Salaga writes, please help me tell the president that we simply want our 25 million Ghana cedis back. We need that money to at least pay some of the service personnel or all the other debts we've accumulated. Thank you very much for your messages. I know there are more. I'll read them. Honorable Ablakwa.
Jiffer, listening to my honorable colleague in Parliament, I really get depressed. We are voted as MPs to go to Parliament to keep the executive in check. Our oath of office is to ensure that the Constitution of the Republic is respected. We have a fiduciary duty to ensure, regardless of the political parties that we belong to, that they act in ways that do not violate the Constitution. All of us are under the Constitution of this Republic. And we as parliamentarians, the Constitution empowers us, Article 178, that there must be no expenditure of public funds without our approval. And then an MP thinks that, this is a light matter that he can explain away. You cannot.
Are there urgent questions regarding
yes, we have filed 3 urgent questions, the Honorable Kwame Agboja and I. We want to know the legal basis. We want to know how much has been spent so far. Because you see, on the matter related to cost, the taxpayer funds that have been put into this project this far is now in hundreds of millions. You see, apart from the 25 million Ghana cedis and the 32 million Ghana cedis, when the land was being prepared, there were demolitions. The passport office, which is under our sector, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Foreign Affairs Committee, which I rank on, has oversight. I am aware that 10 million Ghana cedis was spent refurbishing another property for the passport office to move. That's 10 million cedis. The judges, when we demolished their bungalows, we had to spend extra money, millions of cedis, to relocate them to some apartments in prime location. And you can't put our judge's address in public. It's not done, so I wouldn't do that. But I know we are spending millions of Ghana cedis relocating them temporarily. Then we are also spending money constructing high-rise buildings for them in cantonments. Again, I won't give the specific location, just to say in the cantonments area. Millions of Ghana cedis. Then there was also the Malian ambassador's residence. Many people don't know that. The Malian ambassador's residence was demolished. Government entered into an agreement with the Malian government that we will relocate you at another prime location, airport residential. The last time our committee checked, government has only able to pay for a bare land for the Malians at airport residential. And you know the cost of paying for bare land. It was just a few months at airport. So are we required to
construct for them?
Now the Malians are waiting for the construction, yes, because it was a residence. which we demolished. The ambassador is currently renting. So they are waiting. So by the time we put all of this, millions of Ghana cedis together, that is why I agree with Uncle Joe that if we can suspend this project, at least the government side of it, the government obligation, it will help. But even more fundamentally, the finance minister must be told in clear language that he's not above the constitution. The president must understand that he's not above the constitution, because all of this is being done in his name, that he made a personal pledge to God. You are former Attorney General of this republic, and you know the constitutional provision. Now, since we asked this question 3-4 days ago, what is the allocation? Can you show us which paragraph? Because you see, I have here all the Akufo-Addo budget from 2017 to 2022. I've come into the studio with all of them. President Akufo-Addo has described this project as his priority of priorities. If you take every budget document, you go to Appendix 6, the government's priority projects are listed. I have the 2022 budget priority project Appendix 6 at page 264. You don't see National Cathedral. So you see Maslock, 50 million is given. And interestingly, if you add Ajayi's payment and the 25 million, 50, which comes to about 57 million, is more than money allocated to Maslock for small-scale enterprise people. It's more than money allocated for business development. It's only 15.5 million. He's a businessman. Only 15.5 million. But the government priority projects are listed, 11 of them, from Maslock to NAPCO to National Education Authority, Zongo Development Fund, Free SHS, Livelihood, LEAP, and all of them listed. You take 2021 budget, page 241, all the priority projects, 17 of them listed. You don't find National Cathedral here. Because a budget is about revenue and expenditure, and it's about numbers. Before Parliament will pass the appropriation bill, which means this is how much you can spend in a year. We deal with numbers.
Is there no chance that maybe this is coming out of the budget of the government for government machinery, for instance? I mean, do we need to get as granular as that?
Yes, you must. Yes, because every item you can't spend every item. If you see how the appropriation bill works, every sector. So if you take the say Foreign Affairs Ministry or Office of Government Machinery, your compensation, we must know how many people you are going to pay, how many employees. Your goods and services, what are you going to use it on? You know, if you do some capex, what kind of infrastructure? So we always ask for the breakdown, and every breakdown comes with its allocated amount, which the House approves. We haven't done that. We haven't done that. So, I mean, why is it that, you know, we want to build a holy place of worship, and we are engaged in all of this shadiness, all of this breaking of laws? And then you see the priority question is so fundamental. Look, I am a rural MP. And Jifa, you know that a few months ago at Christmas, when I saw the plight of NAPCO workers, some of them petition you, they've been thrown out of rent. I decided to put together a Christmas package for them. National service personnel had not been paid for 4 months. I decided to donate my 2 months' salary to them. Because, I mean, you are living with them. You go to the constituent, you see their plight, and they are looking at you. And, I mean, the irony is that we rather who are in a better position, our salaries are coming. We are being paid on the month, regularly. And then the vulnerable rather, some of them have come from the north, sent on national service. They don't have any parent, they know nobody in these communities. And then what? Just less than 600 cedis we give them, we can't pay. In my mind, we should even pay them first. These national service people, NAPCO, before we pay MPs and ministers and all of that. We are not doing that. We say we don't have money to pay school feeding caterers. The 97 pesos.
That's even
97 pesos. What can you are a mother?
They want an for increase. 3 CDs.
Yes, and really, 97 pesos? Can he buy an egg? What can he buy? Even tomatoes. What are they cooking? What kind of food are they cooking with 97 pesos? They are asking for increase. Government says they don't have the money. We don't have the money to solve our flood our flood challenge. We haven't bought textbooks for 3 years. 3 years for our basic schools. Look at all the things outstanding. We can't pay health insurance. It's in arrears for 2 billion cedis arrears, health insurance. District Assembly Common Fund, Get Fund. All of these arrears all over the place. And then we say that this is what we want to spend money on. And you see, the documents we are reviewing, I have received such a stash of information from the Office of the President. You will be shocked at how much money has gone into this project. Now, as we speak this year. Next week, we'll serialize some more. Is this what we should be doing? I mean, so the priority issue is so important.
So the priority question, so quickly, because I know your time is up. Beyond the urgent questions that have been filed in Parliament, what else can Parliament do to rein the government in?
We have honestly started discussing seriously, because this is a clear breach of the Constitution. So, but you know, natural justice principles, at least hear the person. So these questions we have filed is to hear the finance minister. But some of our colleagues are pushing strongly that we should begin processes for a vote of censure, that the finance minister must
But it's not just because of this issue.
Must be sanctioned, particularly for this, because it's such a major violation of the Constitution. And you know, we already have so many issues with him, the conflict of interest matters and all of that, you know. So this is a first stage. I can confirm that this is a first stage. And by our standing orders, when you file a question, it should take 10 working days. So within the next 2 weeks, the finance minister must appear before the House and respond to these urgent questions. So we are looking forward to that. But it's such a shame that we should be where we are, particularly when it's about a cathedral project. I mean, that should have been the purest project measures. And you see, I agree with Uncle Joe that you see, this project should bring us together. We are all Christians. We all love to go there and worship. You know, if you take other jurisdictions, like the Museum of the Bible in the US, like this, it took them more than 80 years. You know, private initiative, they took their time. You know, let's take our time. Nobody is saying that we are against, I want to be clear, I'm not against a beautiful national cathedral where we can go and worship, even though we have a lot of beautiful churches in this country already anyway. And even though the Bible says, you know, in Corinthians that really God prefers to reside in the body. Let's, as Christians, be holy. That's where really he prefers, not in brick and mortar. But no problem. We support the project. But you see, let's do it right. Let's if we are in tough times now, we can hold on. We can wait and fix those who go and worship. If they die, then what is the essence of the cathedral? If people die out of hunger, if floods carry people away, what would be the use of the cathedral? You know, and if they go to the cathedral and they can't even have a decent, you know, collection to offer, tithe to offer. Government has made all kinds of projections, though it keeps changing. Here, sometimes you hear them say 10 years, sometimes 15 years, sometimes 20 years, that they hope that the project will then pay for itself based on what will be generated out of the project. So people must be at least well-to-do. They must keep body and soul together before they can go and worship the Almighty.
All right, thank you very much. And it's
sorry,
still Key Points, and it's TV3 and 3FM. We take a break, and I'll be back, and I'll have the last 20 minutes with Mr. Joe Jackson. Thank you very much for staying with us. So we've been discussing the payments for the National Cathedral as cited in a letter by the finance minister. Let's hear what some Ghanaians were telling us during the week when news broke of that.
The issue of government funding the National Cathedral has been a controversial one since it came up in the 2019 budget. A leaked document from the finance ministry indicates that government is to release some 25 million Ghana cedis as additional seed money for the National Cathedral. Now, this issue seems to cause a stir among some members of the public. Let's hear from them.
If we are not getting money to pay salaries of NAPCO personnel and other service personnel, what's the need of a National Cathedral?
Yankola no mubre and to on market rates for no fire drenuma yankola no
25 million Ghana cedis. You should use that money to pay NAPCO and national service.
We are in difficult times
And the National Cathedral is not, though it's important, but it's not something that without it we can't worship at Christians now. And so if government can probably put that on hold and maybe solve the critical issues we are facing now and then maybe do that one later, I'm sure it will be fine.
The government should pay our caterers so that they can provide us with food, because during break time going out to search for food is very dangerous.
The 25 million needs to be used to build the future for the kids, not for the cathedral now.
So, Mr. Jackson, I think your perspective about putting the project on pause for the meantime from the government side seems to be favored by some. But the other question is, we have all these problems, but they look like the issues of today. Things that are like, we can't feed children, or we can't provide, you know, a monthly allowance of stipend. How do we tackle that then, if we are still determined to pursue the big issues? Let's not forget, free SHS is consuming us, is one of the biggest interventions we've embarked upon. It has consumed significant amount of our resources.
Well, first of all, suspending government participation in the cathedral seems to me like the obvious thing to do.
Won't that harm the project? Because maybe there might be external partners who would like to support, but if the government has pulled back, they may not be willing to.
But the government is not pulling back. There are definitely extenuating circumstances. Haven't we just gone through COVID? Don't we have the Ukraine war? Are our finances not challenged? Has the government not provided seed money in the past? I'm saying today, I have bigger problems. So I want to suspend this, and I'll get back to you when I'm okay. That doesn't sound unreasonable. That's actually, for me, it's the right thing to do. And I will really urge the government to consider it. And I'm happy Honorable Asefwa said that is worthy of consideration. That what we've done, it's spent, it's gone. Going forward, let's suspend government participation. And I will urge everybody else who's involved, if you can, donate. Let this be something that was built by Christians, not with all of us our money. I think that's a legitimate desire, that let it be built by Christians, not by, because once you use public funds, then there are other faiths involved. Because public funds are public funds, they belong to all of us, everybody has a contribution in there. At the same time, listen, when there's a fire burning in your house, that's not when you go and see an architect to do a new design for you. In this country, there are fires burning. And the fires threaten to consume us. And so, there's nothing absolutely wrong in saying this is a fantastic project. The government was prepared to partner to achieve that project. But hey, hold on.
Now, there's the other issue of what has been spent. Do we need an account of that?
Well,
because the other things that Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa didn't strike me until he mentioned it. Should the government give a view of, well, this is what is the extent of its contribution so far?
That's legitimate, and we all need to know. It's our money. It's your money. It's my money. It's all of us our money. So how that money has been applied, it's a legitimate reason to ask. Where did that, how much have we spent so far? I mean, today I just heard Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa, and the issue of the Malian embassy was rather, that's not good. That we broke down the Malian embassy residence, ambassador's residence, and we've given him a plot of land in airport. As a Ghanaian, I would wish to fix that.
So that's a priority.
No, you've already broken down his unless you are paying his rent. And even then, is it desirable for an ambassador to be living in rented premises of a valued ECOWAS country like Mali? Mali is not just any other African country. Mali is an ECOWAS country. Those are issues. I mean, when I heard that, I was disturbed, and I'd like to find out more about this issue. But I think it is a very legitimate issue to say, how much have we spent so far since this process started, right? And interesting also, it talks about commitments that, the letter talks about commitments that had been already been made, that were being paid. Where do we draw the line? Is there another 50 million that we made commitments that we must settle? It's a difficult one.
We need clarity on that.
We need clarity on that. And I think it's a very legitimate question. I believe that in the 10 days ahead, we'll start to get some answers. I don't know whether we'll get all the answers, but
hopefully we'll get some from Parliament
yes.
when the Finance Minister comes to answer. Today, and just before we wrap up on the program, today is June 4. And for many young people, they don't have a clue what that, what happened that very day and all that. Of course, one of the key characters in it, former President Rawlings, has since passed on. What are your thoughts on a day like this, knowing fully well that one of the things that led to June 4 was all these economic challenges, the despondency, and the wish for something better?
Well, first of all, June 4th for me, is a very poignant day, because I was in secondary school then, and I was in advancement, and with June 4th, and then reports started filtering in, and some of the parents, some of our colleagues and our mates, parents lost their lives, even in the early reports. So it wasn't a very pleasant day where we sit. But June 4th also tells me a number of things. What happened was not the way to settle our conflicts. And anybody who says we should have, you could say that we are heading for a coup, but say we should make all attempts
to stop it.
And I don't want another June 4th. I don't desire another June 4th. Whatever our conditions, let's resolve it. As a council, we have a proverb. You say, a coup is a knife, and it cuts. We shouldn't do that again. Right? I had the privilege of speaking to His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings on multiple occasions in more recent times, not in those times of June 4th. I was a very young man then. And I think that he would identify with this sentiment, that in the heat, mistakes were made. But the point is that in a coup, it is heat, and mistakes will be made. So when I think of June 4th, my predominant thought is that conditions may start building up again, but let us all say never again. Never again. And that whatever our disaffection with this current dispensation, it is a lot better than a coup situation.
Now, that said, though, we are in a volatile region. We are in an environment where all our neighbors have suffered one attack or the other due to violent extremism or fundamentalism or coup. And we even, I think during the week, earlier in the week, there were still some. National security has asked all of us to be on the alert. Yeah. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa mentioned that for him, he feels that the greater fear is within, in country, as opposed to external threats. I mean, what are your thoughts about the internal threats, the external? Because internally, people are despondent, they're unhappy, they don't see a future, a lot of youth unemployed. and all that. I'm just wondering, between the external and the internal, which is more serious?
One of the things I would say is this: I was in Form 3 in '79, as a Form 3 boy in '79, and so I've lived through a lot of things. I was in '81, '83, the hunger, everything. That the famine of that time, the return of the
returnees from Nigeria,
and all that. I must say that at this moment, there's a palpable sense that things are not going well, and that we have cause to be worried. Also because, you see, now people can see the heights of luxury. And so the depths of poverty are more painful, are more disheartening, are more frustrating, because there's an alternative that is easily compared with. That alternative is accelerated by social media, by the speed of information that's going around. In '79, if somebody was having a good time, it takes time to filter down. And how do you get to know? Now, in a split second, it's on social media. In fact, they would even want to put it on social media. So we have cause to be worried. Our biggest security threat is the joblessness. And we see it happening all the time in big incidents. Look at look at how people flock towards money doubling schemes, Ponzi schemes, how the insecurity that is growing, parents selling their children.
The recent one that happened.
Yesterday. That the police reported. So it's now no more hearsay. The police have reported on the issue. It's worrying. It's worrying. And if there's anything we should do this June 4th, we should be reflecting on the things that led up to June 4th. We should be asking ourselves, are the conditions repeating themselves? Right? And then we should say, never again.
There's one thing, though, in having a chat with the information minister about 2 weeks ago about the security situation. One of the things he says government will be doing is to clamp down on the high levels of disinformation, and fake news. I'm just wondering, to what extent does that also heighten the security situation? Because we're always seeing, like you said, even on social media, all sorts of information. It's hard to believe what's true or what's false.
It's a tough balance, right? For example, for all its great attributes and the fact that everything from WhatsApp is a hotbed of misinformation, right? Social media spreads information so fast. And we have to understand that the tools we have now are double-edged swords. They cut both ways. But does it mean, what worries me is that every time I hear this talk, I start to ask myself, I hope nobody's going to try and clamp down on social media, as has been done in other jurisdictions. Because you see, now, that will heighten it. It will make it less. People will feel even more frustrated. People will feel even more powerless. And when they feel powerless, when they feel frustrated, when they feel they don't have any option, then things can go wrong. Now there's a safety valve. Somebody can start a hashtag, fix the country, and people will vent. That's a safety valve. But if you take away those safety valves, so in admitting that there's a lot of misinformation, let's be careful that we don't make the perception of the culture of silence even worse. Because there is a perception of culture of silence, right? And I think self-censorship is growing within our communities. But let's not make it worse. However bad our situation is now, it could be a lot worse. And we almost must have hope and faith in the systems that we've built to date, and in the stability that we have to date, in the democratic dispensation that we have to date. We should have hope. We should have faith. And we should believe that we can resolve. We have the resources, the manpower to resolve our problems.
That's the message for us on June 4.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joe Jackson. A pleasure to have you, and thank you for indulging me on the June 4th conversation. I know I didn't give you the heads up, but it's important
yes.
to have it. We'll be bringing you more news coverage in our subsequent bulletins on that as well. But I want to say thanks to everyone for watching the Key Points on TV3 and 3FM, also on 3news.com. Thank you for your messages on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and via WhatsApp. I'm still here. If you want to join me for more news, join me on 3FM Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Up next, of course, is Kids Arena. So call your kids and let them watch. Have a good day, and many thanks to the entire production team.